In today's video, I'm gonna make a world map in Minecraft, but with a major twist. I'm gonna use real data like forest density, height maps, and more to make my map as realistic as possible. And, spoiler alert, it looked really good at the end. So with all that out of the way, let's get started. Now, immediately after starting this project, I ran into a huge problem. So I found the height map that I wanted to use for the project, but I had no idea how I was gonna take an image and put it into Minecraft. Luckily, after a while of searching, I was able to come to this website that did exactly what I wanted it to do. Oh, that's a problem. So it turns out that this image file is way too big for this website to handle, and it just caused it to crash. After another long hour of Googling, I came to this website called herwhore.net that will convert an image file to a schematic which can be used by World Edit. Hopefully. If everything goes correctly, then this should work. Oh, that's a good sign. Oh my gosh. Okay, so it appears that I have made the schematic a little bit on the big side, so no big deal. All I have to do is downscale the image and then just do the same process over. And voila, while this is still pretty big, it's a much more manageable size. Now quickly, I'm gonna go over how to read this height map. So the most purple areas are the flattest, and the reddest areas, as you can see up in here, and the Himalayas are gonna be the highest. So now that we have our height map data imported into Minecraft, all we have to do is raise up the terrain to match the data. As you can see, I start by replacing the purple area with grass, and then I go from there, slowly raising the terrain with the blues, which will be a little bit higher than the purples, and then the blue-greens, which are a little bit higher than the blues, and you get the drill now. After a while, I start working on South America and the Himalayan mountain range. After I wrap up the Himalayan mountain range, I decide to head back to South America and just exclusively focus on there for now. I'm not gonna fully rely on the data from the height map because honestly, that's a bit noisy and I'd rather have nice smooth out terrain. So I'm still gonna generally follow the height map as a guide, but I'm also gonna smooth it out a bit so it just looks better. And now that I've finished South America, I start adding the Amazon rainforest as well as finishing up the Andes mountain range. Finally, I finish off South America with the Amazon River and add some bone meal and sand for decoration, because I mean, who doesn't love beaches? Moving on to North America, I start with the usual process of building the terrain around the East Coast, and then I experiment with a couple of designs for the Appalachian Mountains, eventually settling on a smaller one, because I mean, honestly, its peak is only 6,000 feet up, which is nothing compared to some of the other mountain ranges we'll be building later. After that, I add some trees and shrubbery around the area before moving on to the West Coast. I start by building the Rocky Mountains, which are a tad bit higher than the Appalachian, but still shorter than the Andes in South America. The Midwest area is actually really interesting because, well, in the Midwest, nothing really grows there because it's so hot and sunny. And if you look at a map of North America, you'll see the West Coast is represented as this brownish dead mess. So I tried to emulate that here in Minecraft with some dead bushes and coarse dirt. Once that's all dirtied up, I move on to Canada. Contrary to popular belief, Canada isn't really a snow-covered wonderland. That's only the northern part. For Canada, I kind of just spammed spruce trees and added some snow blocks around the tip and around Alaska. Now, here's the tricky part. Greenland is kind of its own little island thing off to the side, so I didn't really know what continent it belonged to, if any, but it was close enough to North America, so I just decided to rope it in. But wait! Before we even start Europe, we need to talk about water. Yeah, that thing that covers 71% of Earth's surfaces and sustains all life as we know it. Yeah, water. Currently, our map has a pretty big problem. There are no oceans, but we can fix that. All we have to do is replace this area with a random block, let's say light blue stained glass, and now with one click we should... Oh, we just erased the continents. Good thing I made a backup. As I was saying, we need to replace the black blocks with stained glass and then create a box-like shape to hold our water. It was pretty easy once I got the hang of it. I just selected the starting and ending coordinates with my axe and used the //set command. Now that we have our box, it's time to remove the surface layer of stained glass and replace it with water. And bam! Just like that, we now have our beautiful oceans. There were a couple of kinks that needed to be ironed out, however. For example, this weird spot where the water was flowing every which direction. But after fixing up those problems, I turned on shaders and wow. This is looking really cool. I cannot wait to see how the whole world will look when we finish it. Anyway, now it's time to go back to your regularly scheduled Europe construction. In Europe, I started with the British Isles and made my way across the continent. While building, I noticed some really unique things that subverted my expectations. First off, it was a lot more diverse than I was expecting. For example, in the south in countries like Spain, Italy, and Turkey, it was really dry on the satellite map, so I did a lot more dirtying up there than expected. The entire continent was also a lot more mountainous, particularly in Greece and parts of the Middle East. However, the northern and middle parts of Europe were relatively flat except for a couple mountain ranges and mimicked the terrain of the Americas quite a bit. Perhaps the biggest mountain in Europe was the Alps in Switzerland, right in the center of Europe. And yeah, that looks like that's all I have to say. A small segment for a small continent. Next up is Africa. I started off Africa by modeling the continent out of grass blocks and then building the Madagascar island in the Middle East. After I molded out the shape, I built up the mountain ranges in South Africa, and then I used the NASA satellite image of Africa to figure out where to place the sand. So I guess, huge shout out to NASA for making Africa a lot easier. And bam, another continent down. Next up is Asia. And Asia was mountainous. Like, really mountainous. And it wasn't just the Himalayas, no, the entire continent was basically just one big mountain range. Seriously. But once I had finished up all of the mountains and terrain, I once again pulled out my good trusty friend, the NASA satellite map, and noticed that a lot of Western Asia and India was actually really sandy, which I didn't expect. So, like you may expect, I whipped out my sand blocks and sanded it all up. Once that was all done and dusted, pun intended, I pulled out my saplings and got to planting. I stuck mainly to spruce trees for most of northern Asia and Siberia, and then I used a mix of jungle trees and acacia trees, which looks suspiciously like the bonsai tree. And then for a nice finishing touch, I pulled out a map of bamboo distribution and planted some bamboo around China and Japan accordingly. And that's a wrap. Asia is now complete and we can move on to the second to last continent, Australia. I know that I literally just said I was doing Australia, but there were a couple Asian islands like the Philippines and Malaysia that I forgot about, so I quickly finished them up. Australia itself was basically one big desert with a few mountains, so it didn't take long at all for me to finish it up. So that's really all I have to say about Australia. Next up is the last and probably least continent, Antarctica. And just like Australia, I don't really have much to say about Antarctica. It's just a lot of snow and mountains. I mean, there's a reason I said it was the last and least continent. And the best part is that nobody even lives in Antarctica, so there's no people that will get offended at me. Anyway, with that being wrapped up, we have now officially finished Earth in Minecraft. It's astonishing to look back at this and think that it all just started from me trying to import an image into Minecraft. Now, if you guys want the world download, and I know you do, then I will release it in the pinned comment if, and only if, we reach 50 likes. I know it's ambitious, but I know you guys also want the world download, so good luck. And that's all I have to say. See ya.